Man, this video wasn't easy to make at all. Where do I start? I wanted to make this video about the Contax T2 camera, so I bought one off eBay, and when I received it, it was broken. It was acting up in all the ways possible, like having all the lights in the viewfinder light up at once, which is the equivalent of getting into your car and having the whole dashboard of warning lights flash at you. It also made bomb-like ticking noises. I got a heart attack because what else do you do when your brand new camera purchase comes out of the box broken? So I sent it off to a camera repair shop where after a few weeks the serviceman got back to me and said, "No bueno, this thing was dead." Water damage apparently. End of the day, I lost a couple $100. I went through the 5 stages of grief, then I went ahead to get a second camera because, you know, this picture. Alright, in this box is the second Contax T2. Let's hope it works. Okay, it works. So yeah, we can finally begin this video. This is the Contax T2 film camera. What exactly is the Contax T2, you might be asking? Or maybe not, because it's 2025 and everybody who knows about film probably already knows about this infamous camera. Basically, this is a camera with lots of clout. This is a Contax T2, that's a Contax T2, that's also a Contax T2. Remember when Tom Holland and Zendaya recently announced that they were getting engaged? Yeah, that's also a Contax T2. So now I have one of the two things needed to recreate this picture. The first being the Contax T2, which I have, and the second being a girlfriend, which I don't. But turns out, aside from the clout, this camera is actually a really good camera. The best way to describe it would be a really good, really expensive $1,000 disposable camera. Disposable is in air quotes because it's not actually disposable, it's referencing those cheap plastic disposable film point and shoots that are meant to be used once and thrown. So similarly, this Contax T2 is easy to use and does not require any technical knowledge to operate, but yet it can kick out some amazing images, which is an interesting and attractive combination. It isn't actually disposable unless, of course, you're really rich, in which case I suppose anything is disposable to you. It's just that disposables are many people's first point of entry into film, so more people can relate to it. That's why I put it in the title. I'm not trying to clickbait people, don't come after me. Wait, hey! To justify why this camera costs orders of magnitude more than a disposable camera, it better be making some really good images. And it does actually. Here's how. So normally in a disposable camera, you have a tiny lens with a ridiculously small aperture of like f11. The idea is for the aperture to be so small that the user doesn't have to think about focusing the image. The downside of having a lens as dark as f11 is that it's pretty much only good for shooting in like the brightest of sunny days. If you're indoors or somewhere darker, then you might notice, but you need to use the flash. That's why many pictures from these cameras come out with this green muddy look. This look is not part of the film vibe. It's actually just a result of the film being underexposed. Well, back on the Contax T2, the lens is on a whole other level. It's an f2.8 lens, and compared to a disposable, f2.8 is crazy bright, so you can actually shoot indoors or in dim lighting without the need for flash. The other day I was at New Baru, which is this really nice mall with aesthetic ass shops. I had to clock in some cheeky interior pictures. I've come to realize that shooting nicely designed interiors might be my forte, and the Contax T2 is the perfect companion for that. Like, check out these images where the lighting in the shop was pretty dark, but it's no problem for the Contax T2. The images are nicely exposed even without firing the flash. When combined with a fast film of like ISO 800, the bright lens on this camera really gives you some solid stopping power. Low light is no issue, and as I mentioned, I rarely find myself needing to fire the flash. Plus, the Contax T2 has autofocus, so this camera can retain the point and shoot functionality. You don't need to spend time and effort to manual focus like you would on many other manual film cameras. Just point your camera and line up the subject with the center dot in the viewfinder and take your picture. The camera will autofocus on whatever's in the dot, so photography on this camera is fast and easy. Unfortunately, my experience with the Contax T2 autofocus has been a little janky. It's not 100% reliable. For instance, for this shot, the camera failed to catch focus on the leaves of the plant, so the white sheet in the back is what's in focus instead. Same thing for the tree over here in the middle of the frame, it's out of focus, which is a bit of a shame because these pictures are gorgeous otherwise. I guess this camera can't really detect small, irregular objects well. Another weakness of this autofocus system seems to be mirrors, as you can tell from this failed mirror selfie. So yeah, but for any other situation, it should be fine. I haven't come across any other circumstance where the autofocus system trips up. The lighting in these pictures is nice. I love hard lighting. Let's discuss image quality. Besides being super bright, the lens on this camera is made by Zeiss, so the pictures should be razor sharp. Let's compare to some images taken on my Canon Autoboy, which is my other cheaper point and shoot. When the lighting falls to less than ideal levels, that's when issues start to arise. For instance, in this picture, look at the flaring around the trees, it's quite insane. But for the Contax T2, the images hold up much better in all lighting conditions, whether the lens is wide open or closed down. We still do see a little bit of chromatic aberration in the corners of the images, especially on busy subjects like trees. But yeah, that's about it. It's not really a big deal. In terms of image quality, the Contax T2 is no slouch. I mean, one of the reasons why it's so expensive in the first place is because it can take nice pictures. So I'm glad to be able to confirm that. Back in the 1990s, when this camera was released, it was targeted at the luxury photography market, so it has some features for those who may want more manual control over the photography process. So check out the Contax T2 lens. It has an aperture ring from f2.8 to f16, and the fact that you have an aperture ring on a film point and shoot is crazy. f2.8 is labelled in green because it corresponds to the auto aperture mode, where the camera selects the aperture for you. You can't actually force the camera to go f2.8, and the camera will only open up to 2.8 if needed in the auto mode. The viewfinder also reports to you the shutter speed that the camera is going to use before shooting, which is really useful. Speaking of shutter speeds, this camera can go from 1/500th of a second to 1 full second. And if you have a tripod on you, then you can choose to go bulb mode, which means that the camera's shutter will stay open for as long as you hold the button down. I use that to capture this 20-second exposure at night, which I think looks pretty good. If anything, I think the beef that I have with the Contax T2 viewfinder is that it's a bit small. As someone who wears glasses, I struggle to see the whole frame sometimes. Another crazy thing that the Contax T2 can do: manual focus. Just turn the dial past the AF mark to focus on infinity and continue turning to select your focus distance, anywhere from 5 to 0.7 meters. The viewfinder also tells you whether your manual focus is on point or not via 2 arrows which tell you whether you're either front focused or back focused. Very neat. There's also the exposure compensation dial, which lets you over or underexpose your film by up to 2 stops in half-stop increments in case you want to push or pull your film, or like me, just want to pelt your emulsion with more photons. The point I'm making is, for point and shoots, manual control is a rarity, and the Contax T2 is as manual as a point and shoot gets, or at least it's one of the most manual ones out there. And that's why this camera is so sought after. It offers choice. The Contax T2 is a camera that is convenient to use without taking away the manual controls that a seasoned photographer might want. Also, yeah, using Blackmagic, this camera can somehow squeeze 37 shots out of a 36 shot roll every time, which in this economy is quite the blessing. Functionality aside, there's no doubt that one of the reasons why this camera is so popular is because, well, it just looks so damn good. Like, holy shit, the Contax designers were legit cooking with this one. The camera truly looks premium, and for the price it commands, it better. The champagne colorway goes hard as hell too, and there's also the silver or gold options as well, which is literally the equivalent of Skin's IRL. For its rock-hard titanium build, it's actually not that heavy or unwieldy. Plus, the fact that the lens retracts into the camera when you turn it off just makes the whole package more flush and easy to carry around. You don't have to worry about the lens bumping into things. The action of the lens moving in and out also just looks really cool. It looks like a missile silo. Plus the dials, the curves, the shapes of the camera body, the way it feels in the hand, everything comes together beautifully. I love it. In terms of features, there's a 10-second timer as well as a rewind button in case you want to end your roll prematurely. The little LCD on the top is always on and reports to you the shot count as well as informs you when the camera is low on juice. You can choose to use flash by turning the aperture ring to the lightning icons, with one lightning being regular flash and two lightnings being red eye reduction mode. When you use the flash, the shutter speed is capped at 1/30th of a second, so you don't have to worry about blurry images. The camera reads the DX codes on the film canisters to know the ISO of the film you're shooting. If there's no DX code, then the default is 100 ISO. And of course, there's also the things that I mentioned previously, like the exposure compensation, aperture selection, and manual focus. And you get all that in a small, lightweight, beautiful camera body that you can take anywhere with you. It's good stuff. Now, as much as I've been glazing the Contax T2 for the whole of this video, there's a reason why it is as controversial as it is popular. Hell, go onto Reddit or some forums or something, and you'll see people who feel as passionately about this camera as they do about politics or something. That mainly boils down to the price. Nowadays, this camera can fetch a price of 1,000 freedom dollars, sometimes even 2,000. And for what it is, which is a film point and shoot, that is a lot of money. It's also no secret that the clout is the reason why some people hate this camera, calling it overpriced and meta, which is kinda true, I suppose. For the same amount of cash, you can get yourself a lot more kit if you look at other options. To add insult to injury, these cameras aren't timeless investments. Unlike Leicas, Hasselblads and Mamiyas, which are fully mechanical and can last the test of time, something like the Contax T2 is packed full of electronics. And the thing about electronics is that they eventually all die, be it due to pure age, or water damage like my first Contax T2, or the plastic behind the flash burning out, or maybe even the repetitive action of the opening and closing of the lens wearing out the ribbon cable that connects the lens to the motherboard. These cameras are destined to die, potentially in the most inopportune and unexpected moments, much like a hamster. Just hop onto Google and you can find the laundry list of all the ways the Contax T2 can unceremoniously unalive itself. This camera has so many points of failure, and there's no knowing when it will tap out on you. It's a matter of when, not if. And when it does happen, repairs are going to be difficult and expensive at best, or impossible at worst. So some people simply can't justify owning this camera. As nice as it is, it could tap out on you tomorrow, which for a camera of its price doesn't feel right. And I guess I learned the hard way. Having the first one die right out of the box is kinda crazy, but that's the nature of owning one of these things. Are you willing to deal with the risk of the camera breaking sooner rather than later? That's the question that every prospective Contax T2 owner needs to ask themselves. Alright, I've been comparing the T2 to disposable cameras, and of course the T2 wipes the floor with the disposable camera. They're in totally different product classes. But the Contax T2 isn't the only product of its type. There are also many other point and shoots on the market, each boasting the same advantages that the Contax T2 offers, like a better lens, auto exposure and autofocus. And as I pointed out in my previous Autoboy video, the alternatives often provide a much better value proposition than the Contax T2, often costing just a few $100s compared to the 1,000 minimum that you'll be paying for the Contax T2. However, the way I put it is that there's no other camera that does what the T2 does in the way the T2 does it. The Nikon 35Ti and Ricoh GR1 come close in terms of functionality and image quality, but they wind up costing close to the Contax T2 anyway. The Yashica T4 has a Zeiss lens too, but doesn't have manual aperture, has the worst build, and can't remember flash settings. So every time you turn on the camera, it will be on auto flash by default, which, as I mentioned in the Autoboy video as well, I don't like because I don't believe machines should be given free will, but don't tell Megatron I said that. The Konica Hexa AF doesn't have a flash, and the shutter speed tops out at 1/250th of a second, which is too slow sometimes. The Olympus AF1 has no manual capabilities. The Olympus XA has manual capabilities but is not a point and shoot. The Leica Mini Luxus viewfinder is too small. And of course, you have the array of lower quality but cheaper point and shoot cameras, which once again were only designed to be as easy to use as possible. But when you compare the price of the Contax T2 versus its alternatives, is it worth 10 times the price of the alternatives which can get 80% of the same thing done? If you're thinking about getting a point and shoot film camera, then it's worth thinking about what truly matters to you, what you actually need, and whether you value what these cameras can offer you. So yeah, I think you can pretty much guess the conclusion of this video, given that I literally bought a second one after my first one broke. I found my love for point and shoots when I was shooting in Australia late last year, where the quick draw point and shoot style of photography really spoke to me. It got me a lot of shots I otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and it's perfect for travel. At that time, I was using the Autoboy and there were shortcomings. Don't get me wrong, it still helped me produce a lot of amazing work, but there were situations where it fell short. So I wanted a camera that was a cut above the Autoboy, and I was willing to shell out for the Contax T2 because, you know, I just wanted to own one. To have a camera that's portable enough to take anywhere with me, while knowing that the images will be as good as from my other camera gear. And as much as it is fallible, it has solidified its place in photographic history for better or for worse. And the time to own one never gets better, as the cameras and access to the parts and repair services only get more and more scarce. In 20 to 30 years, would there even be any surviving copies left lying around? And if they did, then they'll probably cost as much as a house would anyway. This camera definitely isn't for everyone. If you're looking to try film or like disposables without any prior technical knowledge about photography, then I recommend just about any film point and shoot. The step up from a disposable camera to a point and shoot is quite big without needing to learn much in the way of technical knowledge, so I'd recommend something like my Autoboy much more easily. Check out my video about that if you want. But if you want a Contax T2 for the right reasons, then there's simply no other camera that can do what it does. So it's just up to you whether or not it's worth the jacked up price, and of course the risk of it dying anytime. Such is the nature of film photography, sinking money into rotting pieces of metal and glass. This hobby will be my end. I suppose the lesson that you guys can learn is to buy Contax T2s from reliable sellers, somewhere that, you know, at least offers a return period. And if you see a suspiciously cheap deal, then it's probably too good to be true. If you're going to be sinking so much cash into a camera, then I think it's worth spending a bit more to make sure that your investment can last. So yeah, all I can do is cross my fingers and hope that my Contax T2, which is my second one currently, is not going to tap out so soon. I'll baby it, use it gently, keep it out of the rain, and hopefully it can give me a good few more years of use. I plan to carry it around as much as possible and, you know, take pictures in my daily life. And when it breaks, will I be buying a third one? Let's hope I don't have to answer that question so soon.